The lesson today is Update Analysis of the King of the North Study and a Reply to UPA7. This video is being made because recently UPA7 and its leader, Eric Edstrom, has made a video basically saying that we here at our ministry, Brother Peralta, have made false teachings and so forth with the King of the North study. So we want to see if that's true, if Brother Edstrom is correct or we're correct. The way we're going to find out is to go over all the references and not do a slice and dice presentation like Edstrom likes to do, but we're going to dive into this very, very deeply. So we figured this is an opportunity. The Spirit Prophecy says that truth can't afford to be fair. Okay, so we want to be fair. He has brought some issues that need to be clarified, and we're happy to do so. So we ask that you kneel and pray, claim the promise of John 16:13, and he shall guide us into all truth. Let's begin. All right, the counsel for our study is, let us remember always to observe the inviolable rule that interpretation of one inspired statement must harmonize with all other related statements. Excuse me. Some who are anxious to risk present truth on the weight of what one inspired statement says or seems to say or imply are thereby presumptuously or very ignorantly overlooking the weight of evidence. Others are doing this through short-sightedness, while still others are doing it to prop up certain cherished ideas of their own. 3 answer, page 41 and 42. All right, well, let's get started with his first statements.
That Great Britain held the title of King of the North up until around World War II or shortly thereafter. Following the establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1948, the United States has become King of the North. And finally, that words of Little Flock, page 8 and 9, identifying the United States as the last power that treads down the saints, is correct. It's not confusing, nor is it limited light. So we have a struggle here. That Great Britain held the title of King of the
So let's look at the first point that he brings out. Great Britain held the king of the title until around World War II. All right, so the end of the war came in May 8th, 1945. World War II in Europe came to an end. Who's right, Edstrom or inspiration? So let's keep that in mind, that the May 8th, 1945 is officially known as the end of the war. Although we know the Rod says it was still ongoing and it's going to be heated up, but officially, as far as the world goes, this is what they did. The only portion of Daniel 11 yet to be fulfilled is this verse, the last of the chapter, since these prophecies are made to be understood only when they are being fulfilled or after fulfillment. Verse 45 is not as clear as we would like to have it. Consequently, concerning the place of his tabernacles and his end, also as to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. So the key point is this. Why did the King of the North still be proclaimed to be Great Britain 3 years after World War II? So Edstrom is incorrect. It was not relinquished around World War II. For even 3 years after, the Rod still proclaimed, as you can see, November 28, 1948, that the King of the North had yet to be transferred over, whether another power shall come. So at this point, the Rod was confirming that it still was Great Britain. So we can see the inspiration is correct. Edstrom of UPA7 is incorrect. All right, he then makes the other statement. Following the establishment of the modern state of Israel in 1949, the United States has become King of the North. All right, so when he read this statement, brethren, as to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North before verse 45 is filled, Only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. So when we read this for what it really says, it asks a question. It doesn't say another power is going to come. It says as to whether another power shall inherit. He doesn't know. He says the time will tell. But this is where we get interesting. What proof does UPA7 have of a change in the King of the North? Let's take a look. All right, so let's look at the proof that he has in his latest video on the King of the North.
How is it that Israel is a sovereign nation state that was established in 1948? But the question is, well, is Israel controlled by or ruled over by United States or Great Britain? So we have to ask the question, how does America rule over the Promised Land today? And the answer is through a proxy. And part of this is the close association between the head of the United States, the president, and the leader or the prime minister of Israel. It's been a very intimate, close relationship for over 5 decades. And evidence for this comes from all kinds of sources. Perhaps one of the premier is this book called The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy. It's written by 2 scholars, John Mersenheimer and Stephen Walt. They are academics at the University of Chicago. So these are not opinion makers or fly-by-night commentaries. These are people that spend their career studying the stuff and publishing papers. How is it that...
All right, so now he makes a claim that the Israel lobby is really who's pulling the strings. Well, let's see what Wikipedia says about the Israel lobby and U.S. foreign policy. Is a book by John Mearsheimer, professor of political science at the University of Chicago, and Stephen Walt, professor of international relations at the Kentucky School of Government at Harvard University, published in late August 2007. It was a New York Times bestseller. The book describes the lobby as a loose coalition of individuals and organizations who actively work to steer U.S. foreign policy in a pro-Israel direction. The book focuses primarily on the lobby's influence on U.S. foreign policy and its negative effect on American interest. The authors also argue that the lobby's impact was unintentionally harmful to Israel as well. Mearsheimer and Walt argued that although the boundaries of Israel lobby cannot be identified precisely, it has a core consisting of organizations whose declared purpose is to encourage the U.S. government and the American public to provide material aid to Israel and to support its government policies. Wow. Now, do we understand what we just read, brethren? This flies in the clear face of Eric Edstrom and UPA7, because this statement here shows that this lobby is put together to support its government policies. Whose? Israel's. So they are supporting what Israel is doing. They're not saying support United States government's policies, is it? No, it's supporting the Israel policies that the Israel government makes. So they're just showing support for the freedoms, for the decisions that Israel makes. And so this is what that lobby is doing. So the idea that this Israel lobby is somehow controlling Israel is just disgusting interpretation brought on by somebody that always claims that we here make false reports and false teachings and so forth. Well, there's a perfect example, brethren, of what this brother is up to. All right, but who really rules Israel today? Well, we found this again, Wikipedia. Politics in Israel are dominated by Zionist parties. They traditionally fall into 3 camps, the first 2 being the largest, labor Zionism, revisionist Zionism, and religious Zionism. There are also several non-Zionist Orthodox religious parties and non-Zionist secular left-wing groups, as well as non-Zionist and anti-Zionist Israel Arab parties. But we see that they fall into 3 main groups, and those are all Zionists. So that who's running the country. Let's keep that in mind, because that'll be helpful as we go forward in the study. All right, who are Zionists and what does Great Britain have in connection? All right, this is the well-known Balfour Declaration made in 1917, and you'll see a lot here in this one declaration. All right, Foreign Office, November 2nd, 1917. Dear Lord Rothschild, I have much pleasure in conveying to you, on behalf of His Majesty's government, the following declaration of sympathy with the Jewish Zionist aspirations, which has been submitted to and approved by the Cabinet. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use our best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights of political status enjoyed by Jews in any other country. I shall be grateful if you would bring this declaration to the knowledge of the Zionist Federation. Sincerely yours, Arthur James Balfour. Now, Balfour was a high-up representative at that time for the Great Britain government. And he was writing to Rothschilds. Well, he knew at that time, and even down to today, brethren, do your homework, that the Rothschilds are de facto leaders of Great Britain. Okay? As Rothschilds go, so do Great Britain. Okay? Great Britain does nothing without the overseeing and control of the Rothschild dynasty. In fact, this is why we made videos of this effect and numerous reports that the Rothschilds are indeed part of the driving force of the King of the North today. And you'll see more because they own, or in the background, they control much of the politics through the Zionist movement in Israel today. This is why the rod is so awesome. It didn't explain all this, but time is, went by and we further know more of the details. All right, so let's look at some other issues. Now, who is that Lord Rothschild that we were looking at in the Balfour Declaration? Lord Walter Rothschild, second Baron Rothschild, Baron de Rothschild, 8 February 68, 27 August 37, was a British banker, politician, zoologist, and soldier who was a member of the Rothschild family. As a Zionist leader, he was presented with the Balfour Declaration, which pledged to a Jewish national home in Palestine. Rothschild was the president of the Board of Deputies of British Jews from 1925 to 1926. Here's another fact. While private ownership of the land is common, mainly in urban areas, most of the land in Israel, now get this, brethren, over 90% of the land area is in the ownership of either the State of Israel or the Development Authority, or the Jewish National Fund. Note, the Zionist leaders have control of the government and have a Rothschild Great Britain historical connection even today. No USA rulership at all. You see, brethren, now when you get the politics and then you understand the land ownership, where are you going to see the United States controlling Israel? That's a fantasy. Now, we're going to get to more about the United States role, but I just want to make this clear that Edstrom and his UPA7 story falls way short of the truth. All right, so what did come here? Well, the rod is always right, since those who ask the questions agree with us that we are now living in the time of the end. We need not say more concerning that phase of the subject, but we do need to have them tell us which power at this particular time, August 31st, 1946, in the time of the end, has added the glorious land, Palestine, Egypt, and other countries to his empire. The answer that anyone can give is that Great Britain took these from Turkey and has virtually ruled them ever since. Plainly then, during the time of the end, Great Britain is king of the north and Turkey is king of the south. Now we see that that was made August when? August 31st, 1946. All right, so this is key because we're going to look at some dates here and why these dates are important. All right, so in word to the little frog, here's another next statement from Edstrom. Word to the little flock 8 and 9, identifying the United States as the last power that treads down the saints, is correct. All right, so this is where he gets it from, and many other brethren as well. The spirit of prophecy also states that the king of the north, brought to view in Daniel 11:45, and the two-horned beast of Revelation 13, is the same power, and that it shall bear the mystical number 666. We quote, "This power is the last that treads down the true church of God, and as the true church is still trodden down and cast out by all Christendom, it follows that the last oppressive power has not come to his end, and Michael has not stood up. This last power that treads down the saints is brought to view in Revelation 13:11 to 18. His number is 666. A word to the little flock, page 8 and 9. Again, that can be found in Shepherd Rod, volume 2, page 151 and 152. But let's go back to this. Let us remember always to observe the inviolable rule that interpretation of one inspired statement must harmonize with all other related statements. Some who are anxious to risk present truth on the weight of one inspired statement what one inspired statement seems to say or imply, are thereby presumptuously or very ignorantly overlooking the weight of evidence. Others are doing this through short-sightedness, while still others are doing it to prop up certain cherished ideas of their own. 3 answer, page 41 and 42. Very, very good counsel for us to know how to read the rod and interpret it. Is the U.S., the two-horned beast, the sole king of the north? Question. Did the rod have a good detailed vision of the end times in 1932, or was it borrowing understandings from the times then present? There are circumstances in connection with certain aspects of every message which necessitate clarification. Such clarification, however, can be no greater than the light which shines at the time, and the light may come solely from within the message, or again it may derive from a limited understanding common to the time then present. Any understanding which the messenger himself shares. Once answer, page 48, 49. So we have to be very careful, brethren, that in the early writings of the rod, we know that the message was borrowing often some end time event understandings from spirit prophecy. All right, this fact we must have firmly in mind. The early S-Rod writings did not have the kingdom events timeline knowledge. So an early statement made concerning 144,000, the kingdom, king of the north, Sunday law persecution, etc., all must be taken in a context with the knowledge then present, known then present. This rule clears up some misunderstandings. Track 8, 1937, began the kingdom light. Example of borrowed understanding. So let's take a look at 3 examples. The 144,000 get persecuted by the Sunday law. See our video, does the 144,000 get persecuted by the Sunday law? No physical setting up of the kingdom of Israel. The king of the north will be solely United States. So you see, these are 3 of the examples of the borrowing that the rod did in the early years. And it had no choice, because obviously the light had not come to the message at that time, and the scroll had not unrolled to that time when the message knew more about these topics. But later the scroll unrolls, and we can find that in track 12, page 86 and 87, 1941. After the dividing of Alexander's dominion, Egypt and Palestine were, as previously seen, ruled first by the Ptolemies, second by pagan Rome, Daniel 11:15 and 16, third by Daniel 11:22, and fourth again by the Christians, specifically by Great Britain, Daniel 11:41. These are the only historically and prophetically recorded supersessions involving the ancient lands of Egypt and Palestine. Now this is very key. Let's look at this closely. The surrendering of these countries by one prophetic king to the other unmistakably identifies the king of the north and the king of the south from the time of the dividing of Alexander's empire to the present time, and leaves no room for doubt or argument. Very, very key that we use to unlock this topic, brethren, is that the surrendering of of the countries, which is the Holy Land and the other land, to one prophetic king or the other, unmistakably identifies the king of the north. So we'll keep that in our memory bank, because that is a key that we need to have. Rome, the king of the Norse, entering a second time into the glorious land, Daniel 11:41, shows that though, as aforementioned, it once took the land from Ptolemies, Daniel 11:16, it later in 633 lost it to the Turks, and in 1919, in the time of the end, wholly regained it again, or regained it. Here is simple proof that in modern times the Mohammed rulers are in prophecy called the King of the South, while in England's kings, along with the disrupted family of Christianite kings, whom prophecy says will not cleave one to another, Daniel 2:43, are called what? King of the North. So the key point in this reference, well, there's a couple. We saw the identification, and now we see another key point in the bottom part here. Key point: Christianite kings are known as King of the North. So we're establishing the fact, brethren, that Edstrom and his misguided video saying that the King of the North is solely United States. Well, what is he going to do with this reference, brethren? The Christianized kings. Now, that would include the United States, yes, but it would include Great Britain and all the other Christianized kings of other nations as the King of the North. So we'll get further into this, but this is a good identification. All right, now here we go to another identification. Antitypical Assyria is another description of the King of the North. Because of idolatry, the Assyrian was permitted to take God's ancient people and their pleasant land, and certain it is that the Assyrian will control the land just so long as God's people continue in idolatry. But just as soon as all idols are cast aside, yes, as soon as the great revival and reformation takes place in the hearts of the people, then the Assyrian, the power that now rules them, shall certainly fall, and God's people shall just as certainly return. 1TG number 33, page 4 and 5. So what do we get from this reference? The key point: antitypical Assyria is now controlling the Holy Land. So we're starting to see this King of the North and all its identification that the rod message gives. And we see it expand so much more than the limited light, or the ignorant light, let's call it, of just saying that today United States is the King of the North. This cannot be substantiated, brethren, with the facts, with the weight of evidence, which is something UPA and Edstrom is expert at doing. They like to present these, look at this gentleman's report, look how wrong he is, this, and this, when they themselves don't understand the issue at hand. This is a perfect example, brethren. I hope we learn from this. I really do. All right, so let's go back to this. As to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. So the answer is, in this date, September 3rd, 2022, the answer is no, it has not changed. We haven't seen one iota of the surrendering of Israel to the United States. Don't believe anybody that's going to tell you otherwise, brethren, because they're shooting up the wrong, whatever the term is, the wrong idea. They have a false idea, and they're trying to bring that to you as truth. And the Lord isn't fooled here, okay? He doesn't appreciate short-sighted teachers that cut, slice, and dice teachings so that they make their package and their understandings a nice little glossy presentation, when it's so full of holes. So you be sure to understand the full message teachings and the whole weight of evidence, and you'll be okay. All right, so how do we harmonize word to the little flock with the rod? Spirit prophecy had limited light on end-time events. No kingdom mentioned, for instance. The rod did have such light later. Spirit prophecy saw a limited part of the King of the North's makeup, whereas the rod saw it all. Okay, so we have to understand that when Spirit prophecy was talking, you notice it didn't say Christianized kings, which the rod later said. You notice it didn't call out Great Britain, which the rod later said. You can see why the Spirit of prophecy did not have the mantle of the Elijah message. It had the mantle of the Spirit of prophecy message, which is a forerunner, as we know, to the later light, which is the rod message. USA is the last power, Kingdom of the North, that treads down the saints, but only in conjunction with the Christianized kings, 10 toes. Now, we'll get into a little bit aspect of that later. The rod calls the power that controls the Holy Land the King of the North. The USA today does not control the Holy Land, but is a helper to the power that controls the Holy Land, the Zionists. So they're actually helping the controllers, which is the Zionists, which in reality is Great Britain, the Rothschilds. So if you want to sum it down to the basics, brethren, the United States hasn't left Great Britain's control. Can you believe that? Even though we proclaim we broke away and became a nation, in reality, that string, that cord coming from Great Britain has never been cut. Look at our history, the banking movement and so forth. And today we're $23 trillion in debt. And who do you think we owe this to? We owe this to the bankers. Who controls the bankers? The Rothschild dynasty around the world. They have interest in almost every bank. I think Korea and Iran are the only two that they do not have any interest in the banking system. All right, so history shows that Great Britain, led by the Rothschild dynasty, has directly played a leading role in that Zionist movement. Plainly then, during the time of the end, Great Britain is King of the North and Turkey King of the South. Okay, that's found in 1TG number 422. The rod saw it all. So even though we sometimes doubt what the rod plainly says, if we stop doing it, we're going to be in such strong position to know the message. All right, so now let's understand another point that Edstrom makes here, and in fact, it's a mocking, which he does often. He's mocking us, but let's hear it. I want you to hear it for yourselves.
Continues on, but as we've learned from the earlier rod statements, the USA will take over as King of the North and be the last one. However, this all appears, once again, to take place after the final war and subsequent Ezekiel 9 church judgment, as explained in part 2. But we know that there are many details yet to be made known, and as mentioned, this subject is not as clear as we should like to have it. Really? Well, I guess apparently, according to Peralta, it is. But he is now making another claim that, one, Great Britain is the King of the North today, but on top of that, he's arguing that the King of the North, if it's going to be another Christian power, it's going to be the United States, but it's after Ezekiel 9. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Where did he come up with this? Continues on, but as we've learned.
All right, as you can see, he says, where do we come up with this one? Well, let me tell you, Edstrom, where we come up with this. It's from the rod. Read it yourself. USA, last King of the North. When? Michael is to stand up at the time that the last power in chapter 11 comes to his end, and none to help him. This power is brought to view in Revelation 13:11-8. His number is 666, page 8 and 9. The above explains that the two-horned beast is the one to whom the number 666 belongs, and that this beast of Revelation 13:11-18 and the King of the North of Daniel 11:45 are the same power. Therefore, the nation represented by this particular beast and the King of the North, or the man who is to be the head king of that nation in the time when this image beast, the two-horned, enforces the worship of his image. All right, so the King of the North is going to be around when? In the time when the image beast enforces the worship of his image. When is that? Is that before Ezekiel 9? No, it's not. It's after Ezekiel 9. So we understand that according to this reference, the king of the north will be that power, and that will be in the time after Ezekiel 9. So we see the whole package coming together. So it's not Brother Peralta saying this. It is the rod. And I'm ashamed to hear so-called longtime Davidians say otherwise and mock people that bring out the ideas of what, or the words that the message clearly says, brethren. So this is amazing, but let's continue. Whose image is nothing less than the thing he made, or to make a likeness of the real political system of the beast before him, the leopard-like of Revelation 13, 1-10. That is, a likeness of the papal system in the period before the leopard-like beast received his deadly wound. All right, so this is a very, very good statement, and we would like you to make note of that one for future reference. All right, so let's look at our summary. Great Britain is the leading power of the King of the North Christianized kings because it is ruling the Holy Land through its long-time historical Zionist connections. But USA is a part of these Christianized king group, and therefore in that respect considered King of the North as well. But it is not solely the King of the North as often taught. So this is our summary, that we can see this has a lot of moving pieces, and we have to be able to understand, once we get all the references, how we can put this together, how we can know what the rod has for us. And this is beautiful, brethren, because the rod is so deep, yet if we put the parts together, we can see the picture. It's like a puzzle. I tell this to brethren all the time. You want to study a subject, take all the references, put them on the table. And those are pieces of the puzzle, right? And then you start putting the pieces together. And pretty soon, what do you have? You have the picture, beautiful and right in front of you. This is how we learn to study a topic, any issue. And so that concludes our study today. I hope you've been blessed. We wanted to bring out this because it needs to be clarified. We have teachers like Ed Strom with UPA7 and Lennox Sam and even the late Ariel Dakatan, who passed away. We have so many brethren that have misled us and given us false interpretations, false ideas of what the message says. And so we have to be wary of them, brethren. And it's our job, by God's grace, to inform you of what we know and what we see out there. And we hope to continue to bring you important videos that will guide you in this way. So until next time, may God continue to guide you into all truth. Amen.